What is up, everyone? It is April 14th, 2015. I'm JJ Zacharyson, the editor-in-chief at numberFire.com. Going to talk a little daily fantasy baseball with you for tonight's slate, which starts a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to ignore that first game just because most contests are focused on the 7:05 and later starts. Hopefully last night went pretty well. We did recommend the Athletics and Angels stack, which both went well. I opted to go with Andrew Cashner over John Lester just because of his price point, which obviously ended up well. Lester just doesn't look like John Lester right now, or at least at Wrigley. Overall, it was definitely a good night. And tonight's going to be very interesting as well. From a pitcher perspective, you have some studs on the mound. You have Strasburg, who again, we're avoiding in general just because the matchup's not good and because that game's early. But you also have Matt Harvey, who destroyed that Nationals lineup the last time he was out. He beat Steven Strasburg, and he is the consensus easy number one choice tonight at pitcher. The reason for that is that he's pitching in a pitcher's park in New York, and he's also going up against the Phillies, which is one of the worst lineups in the entire league. So Harvey, I think it's obvious that he's the top option. He has 8-9 strikeout upside. And even though he's the highest price pitcher on daily sites, he's still reasonably priced that you can fit in some pretty strong bats. So I think that if you're playing cash games, Harvey has to be your guy tonight. I understand if you want to go away from him in GPPs just to differentiate a little bit, but I would still probably throw in some GPP lineups with him and maybe a more contrarian pitcher as your second pitcher if you're playing on a two-pitcher site. One of those contrarian pitchers could be Despaigne, who's pitching for San Diego tonight for Ian Kennedy. If you recall, he came in for Ian Kennedy. He tweaked his hamstring last week. Along with a lot of people, were playing Ian Kennedy in daily fantasy, unfortunately, that night. But Despaigne is coming in. He's going to be pitching for the Padres. He doesn't have crazy strikeout numbers, so I think that you're hoping for a win, number one, and you're hoping that he can go deep into the game. That game, too, has a really, really low over-under. It's only at 6.5. And the reason for that is what I said yesterday. You have the Arizona Diamondbacks who play in a hitter's park, and now they're going to Petco in San Diego, and it's a pitcher's park. So you're going to see crazy splits and differences in play from that lineup. So I think that, I think if you want to go contrarian, Despaigne not a bad, cheap option. There's some other guys, too. I like Jake Arrieta, obviously, who's pitching against the Reds. He actually took the Reds to he actually no-hit the Reds through 7 innings at Wrigley twice last year, which is pretty insane. Which really has nothing to do with what he'll do tonight, just given sample size, but it's kind of an interesting fact. You have Carlos Carrasco, who has strikeout upside, definitely. Carrasco is a really, really good option, as we saw against the Astros, but I am a little bit worried just in general because the White Sox lineup is a little bit stronger than what the Astros are. But I do think Carrasco is a pretty good option in general. And then you have Shane Green, who's going against the Pirates' righty lineup. He's a righty pitcher. It's at PNC Park. I think that given that park shift, he's pitching in a pitcher's park now, and he's facing a lot of righty bats, so I think he should be a good option as well. So there's a lot of good pitchers, but I do think that you have to go with Matt Harvey as your number one option, especially in cash games. Don't get cute. Just play Matt Harvey. If he doesn't do well, at least a lot of other teams aren't going to do well, but the chances of him doing well, logically speaking, is very high. So from a hitter perspective, you kind of have to go with Nelson Cruz right now. He has 4 homers in his last 3 games. He's just on a tear. He gets the handedness split tonight. Against lefties, Cruz has a career 377 WOBA and a 231 ISO. And he's facing David Huff of the Dodgers, who's a fly ball pitcher. So there's a really good chance that Nelson Cruz could, once again, hit a home run, which would be incredible. Another guy that I'm really into, at least on FanDuel, is Anthony Rizzo. And the reason I'm into him on FanDuel is because his price dropped $500 overnight. So Rizzo's been walking a lot. It's kind of difficult to really back him for what his price point was. But now he's $4,200 on FanDuel. There's a lot of first basemen that are more expensive than him. He's going to be facing a mediocre right-handed pitcher, which he's mashed. Not the pitcher itself, but he mashes righties. So I think that, given that, he sees over 200 ISO against right-handed pitching, and he has a 358 weighted on base average. So I think that because of his big splits, he's a great option tonight as well at first base. Some cheaper options. Our algorithms are really into the Angels again tonight, which makes sense because they're going to Texas. Texas is the best hitters park in the league behind Coors. So you get this Angels lineup that's beastly, and you're throwing them in Texas. A cheap way of getting some Angels bats into your lineup tonight is through Matt Joyce. So Joyce is a lefty bat in that lineup. They're facing a righty pitcher, so he should be in the lineup tonight. He sees crazy platoon splits whenever he sees right-handed pitchers. He sees a near 100-point jump in WOBA, and his ISO reaches over 200. So Matt Joyce is a guy. He's only $2,500 on FanDuel. He's pretty cheap on DraftKings as well. I think that he's a good guy to throw in your lineup, especially if you're using a guy like Harvey, especially if you want to get a guy like Cruz and Rizzo into your cash lineups. Go with a guy like Joyce, who's a cheap option. He could hit, and he's going to be on a team that should score a lot of runs tonight. So I really like Joyce. And then the last guy is Joe Panic. The Giants haven't been super strong offensively to start the year, but I do think that they're going to be a pretty popular stack tonight against Christian Berman of the Rockies. Panic though hasn't started super hot, just like the rest of the Giants lineup in general. But a lot of that has to do with a low BABIP. So his batting average balls in play has been pretty low. And because of that, I think that he should eventually regress. So I don't think there's room to panic, if you will. But I think that he's a nice punt option still at second base, just given that it is a position that you can punt day in and day out. So I do like Panic on a team that should score some runs tonight in the Giants. Again, Matt Joyce, another guy that should be on a team that scores a lot of runs. That's really what you need to look for when you're punting. You don't want to get guys that are going to be in lineups that aren't going to score runs, because what's the point of throwing them in your lineup if they're not going to score any runs? From a stack standpoint, I'll finish it off there. As I said, we really like the Angels tonight. I think 3 of the 5 top hitters that we have projection-wise on the site right now, and you can check out those projections at numberFire.com. 3 of the top 5 guys, I believe, are Los Angeles Angels, so they should be in good shape tonight. I actually really like the Astros against Kendall Graveman, who got lit up by the Rangers in his first start for Oakland this year. The Astros are cheaper. They do have a lot of power, but they do strike out a lot, as we've seen all season long. But I do like the Astros stack. I think that you can fit that in with a guy like Harvey, who's more expensive at pitcher. And then, I think that you can still go with the Blue Jays as you can every night. That would be my third option. But I really like the Astros and Angels tonight. So that's it for today. If you guys have any questions, you can check out our questions app and ask questions through that. Go to numberFire.com, check out our projections, and check out the primer that we write every day for both baseball and basketball. Thanks.